Good morning, my dear students. Welcome back to class on history. Today we are going to begin next chapter titled as Reformation. Reformation. Now, how to define the term called a Reformation? What does it mean? It is a group of religious movements. A group of religious movements started in 16th century by the Christian people against two things: against the drawbacks of the church, and also against the objectionable practice of the clergy. Clergy means that includes the priests and nuns, sisters, etc. Okay, so this is what you mean by the term called a Reformation. It means it is a group of religious movements of the 16th century by the Christian people against the drawbacks of the church and the objectionable practices of the clergymen. Now, what was the target of it? The target of this Reformation was the Pope, the highest authority in the church. So there was a split that happened in the church. The first one is the Roman Catholics, the first division. Second is the Protestants. And who are the Roman Catholics? Roman Catholics are those people who remain loyal to the Pope. Protestants are those who broke away from the Catholic Church. So this is a split that happened in the church. One is known as Roman Catholics, the people who remain loyal to the church, loyal to the Pope. The Protestants who broke away from the church. Now I hope you are clear with the definition of Reformation. Against the drawbacks of the church and against the objectionable practices done by the clergymen. Clergymen means the priests, the nuns, etc. Now, what are the causes of it? There are two different causes that led to this particular Reformation. What are the causes of Reformation? The first one, dissatisfaction with the practices dissatisfaction with the practices of a Catholic Church. So means the people who are not happy with the practices of a Catholic Church. Second is the first one. Second is new learning. These are the two different causes of a Reformation. First one, being not happy with the practices of the church. Second, the rise of new learning. Now, under the first point called dissatisfaction with the practices of the Catholic Church, there are 5 different points to be learned. The first one is economic factors. The first one. Second is corruption in the church. The second point. Third one is rulers' resentment. You will see how it is. Resentment. The fourth one is movements against church. Movements against church, and the last one, immediate cause. These are the 5 causes, 5 reasons that will come under the heading called dissatisfaction with the practices of the Catholic Church. So let's come to the first one, that is the dissatisfaction with the practices of the Catholic Church. What is the reason for that? The Pope was considered as a supreme authority. Okay, he was the absolute authority, but the people were not happy with the practices of the church, the practices done by the church, and not happy with the rituals of the church. So, all this dissatisfaction created or prepared the way for a reformation. Okay, so the Pope was the ultimate authority, but the people not happy with the practices and the rituals of the church, and because of all these situations created a path for reformation. Now come to the first one, that is the economic factors. The church had vast properties and ample income from all these properties that they had, and 1/10 of an income of a person must be given to the church. Tithe means 1/10 of an income of a person must be given to the church. And there was something called Peter's pence. Peter's pence, which means it was the sum collected by the priest. So the church had vast properties and they had huge income. 1/10 of income of a person must be given to the church, known as tithe. And Peter's pence means the sum collected by the clergy. And what happened then? Pope Leo X wanted to build St. Peter's Church. So he wanted the money to build this particular church. So what did he do? He introduced something called letters of indulgence. Letters of indulgence. And what does it mean? It means it is a pardon certificate. It means forgiving certificate. It means those who give the money, those who gave money to build the church, they were given this particular letter of indulgence. Which means till then, if people committed a mistake, they will have to go for a pilgrimage as pardon for the mistake committed by the people. It's like when you do a mistake, you go and tell sorry, or the teacher will tell you write 10 times. That I will not repeat this particular mistake. So that particular writing 10 times is a mean that you can cancel your mistake. At that time, what happened when a person committed a mistake? What happened? Either they had to the priest will tell you, either you go to a pilgrimage or a pilgrim place, or they will give some other penance for the mistake committed by the people. Now what happened? Now the church wanted money to build this particular St. Peter's Church. So what was the option created by the church? They had this option of letters of indulgences, which means a person could be freed from doing penance for their sins by buying this particular letter of indulgence. Before that, for the penance, you will have to go to a pilgrimage, or they will have to go to the priest and they will tell you what is to be done. Now what happened? A person could be freed from doing penance. Now instead of doing the penance, what are you supposed to do? You go to the priest and you buy this particular letter of indulgence. It means the church will get the money and you are free from doing any penance. Okay? And the next one is the term called simony. Simony means the church, the offices of the church. The church offices were given to the highest bidder. Bidder means like you go for an auction, and the auction will be given to the person who bids the highest amount of money. So the offices of the church were kept for the auction, and those offices were given to the highest bidder. And these are the economic factors. The first church had ample vast properties, and they used to get ample income. The tithe, 1/10 of income of a person must be given to the church. Second, the Peter spends again another sum money collected by the clergy or the priest. The letters of indulgence and simony. I hope you have clear, so understand these terms clearly. Now, second one is the corruption in the church. In the beginning, in the earlier times, the clergy, the priests led very exemplary life, which means something which can be followed by the people, and they had great respect in the society. But later, as times went on, the clergy, the priests lacked proper education. They began to live luxurious life, and they neglected, they were not bothered about their religious duties. So, the priest, after some time, promised salvation in exchange for fees. If you go and give 10,000 rupees, the priest will promise you salvation. So they promised salvation in exchange for fees. That's one. And they could pronounce, the priest at that time, they could pronounce a marriage lawful or unlawful. And they collected fees for every transaction in life. So this is how the people or the clergy began to behave later. And there is a Dutch philosopher has written a book in praise of folly. He explained the life of the clergy. And the name of that particular Dutch philosopher was Desiderius Erasmus. Desiderius Erasmus was a Dutch philosopher, has written a book called In Praise of Folly, in which he has exposed the life of the clergy. I hope we have cleared the first two. Now moving on to the third one, that is rulers' resentment. Why the rulers or the kings of at that time, of those times, were not happy with the church? We'll come to the reason. The first reason is that the kings always opposed the interference of the Pope in political affairs. The church began to get involved in the political affairs, which was something which was not liked by the rulers. And the rulers of Europe quarreled with the Pope over the right to tax the church property. There was a conflict between the European rulers and the church, whether the property of the church must be brought under taxation, whether the church property must be given the taxes or no. Philip IV, a French king, forced Pope Clement V to leave his headquarters at Rome and stay in France. Now we are seeing the different activities, different events that happened that show that the rulers were not happy with the church. The first one, the rulers of the Europe had always quarreled with the church on the issue whether the church, the property of the church, should be brought under taxation. Philip IV, a French king, forced Pope Clement V to leave his headquarters at Rome and stay in France. The reason was that he began to get involved in the political affairs. Pope Clement V began to get involved in the political affairs. And next one, we have got King Henry VIII of England got the church lands under an act of 1536. In 1536, he brought an act, that is dissolution of monasteries. Dissolution of monasteries. And what was it? The small monasteries that had less than the small industries that had less income were closed, and the land and the money were taken by the crown. Dissolution of monasteries, the act that was brought out, that was established in 1536. And what does it mean? The small industries that had less income were closed, and the land and the money were taken by the crown. And in 1539, he brought another act with this particular act he closed the larger monasteries. And why did he focus on the monasteries? The reason is that the monasteries were the symbols of church's authority, and they were the wealthiest institutions in the place. The monasteries were the symbol of church's authority and wealthiest institutions. So the King Henry, why did he stop this one? Now coming to the person called King Henry VIII, he was leading a very lavish, or he was having very luxurious life, and he was always involved in a war against other countries, so he needed the money. So what did he do? His focus was on the monasteries, so he began to destroy the monastery system, acquired the wealth and the property, and he was able to remove the influence of the church. So this is what the term called ruler's resentment. Why? The rulers, the kings were not happy with the church. The main reason is that they were getting involved in the political affairs, something which was not liked by the rulers or the king. Now moving on to the next one, movements against church. In Europe, there were anti-church movements. Anti-church means against the church. The reason was that because of the wrongdoings done by the church. Now, there was this particular English priest and Oxford professor called John Wycliffe. He criticized the worldliness of the church and its practices, and he began to give emphasis on the church, on the Bible as a guide for salvation. He taught the people that if you want to attain salvation, you start reading the Bible and understand the content of the Bible. So the church was not happy with the teachings of this particular John, the priest. So he was expelled from the Oxford University. That created dissatisfaction among the scholars and people. So there were anti-church movements in Europe against the wrongdoings of the church. So John Wycliffe, an English priest and an Oxford professor, he criticized the worldliness, the church going behind the worldly matters and its practices. So he taught the people to give emphasis on Bible and consider Bible as a guide for your salvation. But church was not happy with him. He was expelled from the Oxford University. That created dissatisfaction among the scholars. Now come to the last reason, and what was the immediate cause of it? The immediate cause was against the protest against the power of the Pope, which means there were various revolts against the authority of the church, which means there were minor revolts against the Pope because church was controlling everything at that time. But all these minor revolts were crushed by the Pope. Okay, all those revolts were managed by the Pope. He was able to suppress all those revolts. But what happened? We have got a person called Martin Luther, a German priest, raised his voice against the church and the Pope and launched the movement against the church, against the abuses of the church and the authority of the church. And this was the beginning of This was the immediate cause of the Reformation that happened in the church. So these are the 5 different causes that you need to remember under the heading called dissatisfaction with the practices of Catholic Church. Economic factors: how did the clergy collect money from the people? Corruption in the church: how the priest was in the beginning and later. Why the rulers were not happy with the church? The movement against the church. And the last one, the immediate cause. Now we have got the second cause, that is the new learning. The idea is called the spread of new learning and the spirit of inquiry developed by the Renaissance thinkers, Renaissance scholars began to get spread. New learning and spirit of inquiry. And invention of printing press was a huge landmark in the Renaissance because the people began to print Bible in vernacular languages, in their own regional languages. That gave them a new outlook among the lay people or the Christian people. Okay, and we have got the main features like spirit of inquiry, critical attitude, broadening their outlook, question the authority, and people began to question the authority of the Pope, criticize the practices and the rituals of the church, and people had a secular outlook among the people. There was a secular outlook among the people. And the nobles and the merchants, were very jealous of the huge wealth of the church. Okay, they were jealous of wealth of the church and the common man. What happened to the common people? And the common people were not happy with the church because the church collected taxes on the people, and they wanted to have changed the attitude. And that led to the growth of secular ideas. The nobles and merchants were not very jealous of the wealth of the church. The common people were not happy with the church because the church was collecting tax from the people. So that created a change in their attitude that led to the growth of secular ideas. These are the things that you need to remember as the causes of Reformation. Dissatisfaction with the church activities and the prayer rituals. Second, the new learning that led to the something called a Reformation in the church.